Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Let's talk a little bit about news. Who is going to be victorious and who's going to go back to the house a little bit more sad? We'll find out soon enough. We're here on the only place to get your Guild Wars 2 balance patch news because they have icons. The Guild Wars 2 wiki. I highly recommend using this if you are maybe new to Guild Wars 2 and you don't know the names of these abilities by heart. And especially with elite specs, I even don't know these names abilities by heart yet. It's going to be a learning process. But thankfully we have the Guild Wars 2 wiki to fall back on. So let's talk about Catalyst first, because Catalyst is the one spec to get not only PvP changes, but also PvE changes as well in response to what they did to Catalyst a little bit ago with the nerfs. So we're going to do an abridged version of these balance patches because it's going to be there's a lot of information, so we're going to hit the main topics hard and fast. And other things hard and fast. Talk about Catalyst PvE. So essentially all buffs to Hammer. Hammer first and second abilities all received buffs in terms of the power scaling, the damage coefficient, which is very useful. And additionally to the first and second buffs, the third ability has been changed with the orbs. The orbs now no longer last 5 seconds, instead they last 15 seconds, which is much longer of a duration. I honestly would like to see it maybe be 20 seconds, but we'll have to play around and see how it feels. In exchange for this increased duration, the damage of the orbs that they passively do has been greatly reduced to basically do no damage. They still strike, but they either do 0 damage or 1 damage. They have been buffed in terms of its passive effects with those orbs, and the conditions still persist. So if you're using the flame one or the earth one, they still do burning and bleeding, which is very useful for the damage output. Grand Finale, the flip over skill, in turn has had its damage greatly increased. Abilities of Shattering Ice has been increased in its power. To compensate this, the duration and interval between attacks has been increased from 0.5 seconds to 1 second. So it's still a pretty useful skill now in PvE because of its chill application. Additionally, Empowered Empowerment PvP split has been removed. Its effective increase in PvE has changed from 50% back to 100%, which matches PvP and World vs. World. So for those boon builds, you're still going to be pretty comfortable. I honestly don't think that this change needed to be reverted. For Warrior, specifically Bladesworn, even though it's not under the Bladesworn category, Blooming Fire, Artillery Slash, and Cyclone Trigger, as well as Break Step, which are all of your gun blade attacks and abilities, their ammo recharges have been greatly reduced. So 25 to 10, 35 to 15, 40 to 20, and 40 to 20. Honestly, these are a lot of like 50% reductions in cooldown, which is pretty noticeable for a PvE setting. We're going to be able to trigger those skills much faster. And because so many things are ammo based, you have abilities and traits that will regain ammo charges and reduce, the recharge of ammo. And especially with Alacrity, I feel like Bladesworn abilities with the gunblade are going to be popping up much faster. Let's head on over to some PvP and World vs. World stuff. For Warrior, Winds of Disenchantment is no longer going to be reducing the duration by 100%. It's now going to be reducing it by 33%, which is an incredible nerf. Now, it's still going to be pretty much valued because it is very effective to reduce the duration of boons on enemies, especially in large group settings. So I don't know if this will be completely gotten rid of, but it has been really the only utility and elite skill to take for Spellbreakers. So maybe we'll see a little bit more banners, even though I imagine banners were kind of already a thing. They compensated that change with additional healing and support with Vigorous Shouts, Call of Valor, and they also touched a little bit of the Hammer. Unyielding Dragon also is overperforming, so they reduced the might gain from 2 down to 1. Now Engineer, once again not an Engineer player, but they are reducing a lot of its support capabilities. I shouldn't say a lot because I still want it to be viable, but even playing PvP, I noticed that like Scrapper and Engineer in general, they can do a lot of healing and also pump out a lot of super speed and cleanse conditions. But not only do they cleanse conditions, but they swap them to boons. Gyroscopic acceleration, reduce the super speed, and as well as speed of synergy. And also with kinetic accelerators, they reduced a lot of the super speed and sometimes a little bit of the quickness durations for these traits. Medical Dispersion Field reduced the heal share percentage from 25% to 15%. reducing a little bit of that healing. And then Purity of Purpose. This is the one trait that really allows them to be an excellent condition cleanser and also condition flipper into boons. So they're increasing the cooldown from 2 seconds to 3 seconds. Maybe even 4 seconds would have been decent, and I'm surprised that this is just World versus World only. I would maybe expect this to also come into PvP, but maybe because it's only five targets, 5v5, it's not as much of an issue. Who knows? Now for Guardian, my baby. Battle Presence getting chopped down in the department of like your F2 healing is being reduced by half. I like to see it. And also reduce the pulse heal attribute scaling from 0.06 to 0.03. A lot of healing reduction in that passive element. I think that's smart. Passive healing can sometimes bolster things and pad things a little bit too much. I much prefer active healing with single target and or AoE. I think single target healing skills would be really nice to see, and more support for that, especially because of Spectre. Additionally, Test of Faith, Procession of Blades, Holy Strike, and Symbol of Swiftness have all had reductions in damage via straight power reduction or cooldown increases. Next, for core Guardians, we have Righteous Instinct. Increased bonus critical chance from 25% to 40% in PvP only. This is wild, and I'm kind of scared that this is going to overly correct. 25% to 40% is very hefty, and I would have maybe expected like a 33% because they seem to be going very cautious with these percentage multipliers and increases and or like, you know, defensive buffs. So yeah, I'm probably gonna have to play some Guardian now, even though Guardian has never had a difficult time in PvP or World versus World, I imagine. So yeah, next we're gonna talk about some Willbender changes for PvP and World versus World. I like this a lot because while I think Willbender does perfectly fine in the open world and in PvE scenarios, I did notice that in PvP, and I haven't really tried it in World versus World, it does struggle, and especially with power, core power, strike damage builds. Condition damage, it seems to be doing pretty fine, but for that core power, strike damage, it doesn't really do super well. Advancing Strike, the Immobilize has been increased from 1 second to 2 seconds. I love this change. I think that this was extremely important because as a Willbender, you can get to your target, but it's not necessarily about getting to the target, it's then capitalizing on that to deal damage. Lethal Tempo, increased damage bonus per stack from 2% to 3%. Awesome. Once again, more power damage. I like to see it. Now only if Searing Pact were to go away. Flowing Resolve, reduce the ammo recharge from 30 seconds to 20 seconds. Absolutely love it. And the initial base heal has been increased quite dramatically to allow you to sustain in a fight if you do have Flowing Resolve active. Crashing Courage, same vein, it has been reduced from 50 seconds to 30 seconds with its cooldown. And the same can be said for Roiling Light, Heaven's Palm, Mighty Blow, Zealot's Embrace, and also Ring of Rewarding. And also, Zealot's Embrace is not a cooldown reduction, it is instead a power increase from 0.8 to 1.2. I like it. Some decent changes to Guardian. I was expecting maybe more nerfs, but maybe they're being cautious. As for Elementalist, not only did they get core PvE changes, but they also got specific PvP and World versus World changes. So Flame Wheel increased, and in the similar vein, all of the orb mechanics have been increased from 5 to 8 instead of 5 to 15. I think it is a little bit better for PvP and World versus World. I don't know why 8 though. I think it's a nice start, but once again, maybe for PvP and World versus World, I would have liked to have seen 10 seconds maybe. But I think 8, it's a good start. Increased the damage bonus from 5 to 10%, 5 to 10%, 7 to 12, 5 to 10. So not necessarily a direct connection to the PvE changes with its buffs and the efficacy and potency of those buffs. They are a little bit different in PvP and World versus World. Immutable Stone increased the base barrier from 1.4 to 2.9. That also is a very hefty change. Ground Pound reduced the cooldown. Surging Flames increased power. Triple Seer reduced the cooldown. Molten End reduced the cooldown. Soothing Water increased the pulse healing from 1.3 to 1.5. Really smart, because I don't think many people will be taking that healing skill, but maybe now they will. Invigorating Air, Fortified Earth, Elemental Celerity, and Deploy Jade Sphere reduced the cooldowns. And then they're kind of adjusting dagger because focus is so meta in PvP that they wanted to give a little bit more love to the dagger. So Ring of Fire, Fire Grab, it just basically gave it more damage in the form of, you know, increasing power or reducing the cooldown. And I think the same could be said for every single one of these abilities. Frost Aura, reduce the cooldown. Transmute Frost, increased healing. Cleansing Wave, increased healing, which is nice. And also increase the conditions removed from 2 to 3, which I think is good because we do see a lot more conditions flying around in PvP. And now we have Mesmer, and specifically Virtuoso. Basically, they showed a lot of love to Dagger. Flying Cutter, Blade Call, Unstable Blade Storm, all got buffs in terms of damage. I still think Unstable Blade Storm would be better suited for just an isolated location ability, rather than a traveling projectile that fires out abilities and other projectiles. Interesting, but a couple more changes could be applied to Virtuoso. Blade Song Dissonance, reduce the cooldown. Blade Turn Requiem, also reduce the cooldown. Same for Blade Renewal. 60 to 40 is a really drastic change, especially because it grants distortion. I like to see it. Psychic Force, also down from 40 to 30. And Twin Blade Restoration, also from 30 to 25. And also the number of conditions that it removes has been increased from 1 to 2. Very, very important changes for Twin Blade Restoration. And then, finally? Yeah, finally, because, you know, there aren't many more warrior balance changes, nor thief, nor ranger or untamed, which is interesting. But nevertheless, Necromancer, Elixir, Devouring Cut, and Voracious Arc, they have had their power reduced, which is good, because I think Harbinger could be overperforming maybe. It seems very powerful. But in turn, they did buff a little bit of Axe with Ghastly Claws, reduced the cooldown from 10 to 8 seconds, and Unholy Feast got a little bit of a buff. So everyone, those are your balance changes. I think the standout is definitely Catalyst, and I think Guardian got some really strong changes, especially with Willbender, which I think really needed to happen. And additionally with Virtuoso, they got some dagger love. I would maybe expect some more trait changes, but this is just a PvP and World versus World balance patch. I think we'll see more wide sweeping design and philosophical changes in PvE balance patches, and that is coming June 28th or 29th. I kind of forget the date, but it's one of those two. So thank you everyone so much for coming by. If you would like to support the channel, I have a Patreon where you can get early access to videos. Build videos and story videos are currently rolling out over there. And if you'd like to order Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons, I really have to start saying that. No longer pre-order, it's order. You can use my links down below. Thank you so much, ArenaNet. And if you're interested in ExpressVPN or VPN services, I have a link below, which greatly supports the channel. Thank you so much to ArenaNet and ExpressVPN. Comment down below your thoughts about this balance patch. Are there any outliers? I mean, we can probably agree that the loser is probably Untamed. But are there any other things that you were surprised to see or surprised to not see? I would love to hear. Subscribe, like, share, comment, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Bye, everybody. Mwah.